Hey everyone, I'm Brad and this is Watch Rate Heart, and it's Friday, which means it's time for the watch list. It's where I discuss the films I've watched and my feelings about them. And for this week, I thought I'd dip back into the BFI Sight and Sound Greatest Film of All Time list for a few selections. We have 4 movies that made the list, all from different eras of filmmaking, with different cultures and countries being represented. So let's not wait too long and get started by watching these acclaimed films. The first film I'm reviewing today is quite possibly one of the most important and influential films ever made, and that is Sergei Eisenstein's Battleship Potemkin. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.0 out of 5, an IMDb score of 7.9 out of 10, it has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 100% fresh, and it's got a Metacritic of 97. As for accolades, it is on the BFI Sight and Sound's Greatest of All Time list at number 54, tied with The Apartment, Sherlock Jr., La Maîtresse, and Blade Runner, and it's also featured in the book 101 Movies You Must See Before You Die by Stephen J. Schneider. I mean, what hasn't been said about Battleship Potemkin that can't be said anymore at this point? Even after 100 years, it is still stunning to watch. When I go through all of the Letterboxd reviews, they're going to mention one thing, and that's the Odessa steps. And I'm going to do as good a job as I can not to showcase so much of that sequence. But even to this day, it is an amazing sequence. And not only just visually, but just to think how it was created at the time. It is actually amazing to watch. It also tells a very effective story that is at times pretty grisly. Like, there are scenes in this film where there are maggots and there's blood and visceral violence in the film. And this was made 100 years ago. Man, I gotta tell you something, okay? To this day, it is hard to find a movie where you actually see a child get shot and killed on camera. And this film shows it in 1925. I was actually shocked when I was watching it. Oh my God! They show him got shot and the blood on his head. Oh my, holy crap! I was so surprised when I watched that. There's really not much I can say about Battleship Potemkin without going on an entire spiel. So I'm just going to say this. If you love film in any way, it is a film that you must experience. You just have to. If you are someone who is interested in the history of film, if you are interested in film that inspired other films, you have to see Battleship Potemkin. And it's funny, even 100 years later, this film still works. It is so surprising to me. And it's also kind of surprising this is the first time I've watched the whole thing. I watched the Odessa step sequence once in college in a college course, so I saw that sequence already. But even seeing it in the context of the film was amazing. As for a rating for Battleship Potemkin, I'm going to give it 4.5 stars out of 5. Amazing movie. Visually stunning to watch. It still has a very effective story as well. There's not much more to say about it other than if you love film, if you're into the history of film, and if you're into knowing what films inspire other films, Battleship Potemkin is just something you have to watch. So overall, 4.5 out of 5 stars for me for Battleship Potemkin. And on every episode of Watch Rate Heart, I not only give you my opinion, I also give you the opinion of the people at the Letterboxd community. Let's get started with Phoebe. Phoebe gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Phoebe says, "The scream by Edvard Munch, but it's just my face during the Odessa step scene." You're going to notice this being referenced a bunch in these reviews, and I agree with Phoebe. I was stunned watching that sequence too. Let's get into the next review. This one is from Tenton Quarantino. Tenton Quarantino gets it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and he says, "The Odessa step sequence is somehow more visceral, immediate, striking, captivating, and thrilling than any movie today, and this was shot almost 100 fucking years ago." Yes! We need to point that out more. 100 years ago, and it still works. Damn! Cinema is a dead art that has not evolved in several decades and probably never will again, certainly not at this rate. Oh boy, that's dark. Holy shit. And just try to imagine a movie that explicitly calls for a proletariat revolution being produced by Hollywood, aka the entertainment arm of the CIA. Never gonna happen. That is sadly true. I have to agree. It's almost as if those last 2 points are related. Yeah, essentially. But I will say to Ted Quarantino, which he probably already knows, so I'm not saying anything he doesn't know. Independent cinema usually does a lot of risky stuff, even though independent cinema has kind of been co-opted by the Hollywood machine. Films from other countries, too, do an amazing job talking about certain things that, honestly, films in America just don't even touch. So I will say that. But yeah, agree with Ted here. Let's get into the third review. This one is from Boxer Santaros. Boxer Santaros did not give this any rating. I don't think he ever does give ratings to his reviews, which is totally fine. Anyway, Boxer Santaros says, "It's freaky shit. Finally watching old classics like this, and despite having seen every single tick and trick here stolen and parodied and repurposed a billion times over, still being absolutely mentally and spiritually bowled over when those untouchable moments hit. Absolutely, yes. I have seen the Odessa step sequence being aped so much in so many different films, from like The Untouchables to even like being made fun of in The Naked Gun. And it still hits. It's still good. I swear, I can't imagine how most people didn't straight up faint watching this in 1925. Yeah, me too. I couldn't believe it. Even with a lifetime of watching some of the most death-defying action cinema, not sure I've seen anything as heart-stoppingly intense as the whole staircase sequence. Then again, compared to 1925 audiences, I guess I've got the advantage of the perfect soundtrack. Seriously, again, 100 years later, that scene still works. It has been copied, aped at, parodied. It still works. It's an amazing sequence. And we're talking about that sequence like it's the only thing in the movie, and it's not. But, like, it's just such an amazing, amazing sequence. And finally, I got one more review, and that's from Shane Grant. Shane Grant gives it 3.5 stars out of 5, and Shane says, "This is like Dunkirk or Titanic in terms of big-scale action. Otherwise, it plays out like a documentary shot by Kubrick." In terms of big-scale action, I see what Shane is saying. I don't agree that it feels like a documentary at all, especially one shot by Kubrick. I think Kubrick would do something a little more messed up, I think, but that's just me. So to wrap up the review of Battleship Potemkin, even after 100 years, this still is stunning to look at. It tells a very effective story that is at times grisly and brutal. And the honest truth is, if you love film, you have to see it. If you are on film Twitter, you consider yourself a film bro, or if you're one of those cinephiles and you have not seen Battleship Potemkin, you have to see Battleship Potemkin. That's not even a debate. That is not even like something we can go, whatever, I'll get to it. No. If you have not watched Battleship Potemkin all the way through, watch it. And it's streaming everywhere. So, after this review, sit down tonight, watch it, if you haven't already.
So la 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 bye bye. Do you want the stars to play with, or the moon to run away with? They'll come if you don't cry.
The next film from the BFI Sight and Sound list is one that has been greatly under the radar for a long time from a director that I feel like I don't hear a lot about until now. And the film is Killer of Sheep, directed by Charles Burnett. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.0 out of 5, an IMDb score of 7.2 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 98% fresh, and a Metacritic of 96. As for accolades, it's on the Criterion Collection Spine number 1262. It's on the BFI Sight and Sound Greatest Films of All Time list at number 43, tied with Stalker. And in 1990, it became part of the National Film Registry. And it's featured in the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die by Stephen J. Schneider. So let me start this review with a little bit of a hot take. Now, this is a hot take, so you guys are gonna I'm gonna blow your mind with my hot take. So be careful. Killer of Sheep deals with desperation, loneliness, futility, frustration, alienation, and helplessness better in 90 minutes than Jeanne Dielman did in all of its runtime. I've said it, yeah. I am saying Killer of Sheep is a better film than Jeanne Dielman. I am absolutely saying that. But let's get past that. This film is a lot of things. It is moving yet draining. It shows the exasperation of its main character quite well. And not just by what the main character does, but just making you feel that futility of just trying to give his family a better life, and it slowly exhausting him and kind of destroying him from within in a certain way. And the film brilliantly shows the loneliness of this main character while being surrounded by community and people. Honestly, it's incredibly well done. I was really surprised to watch this movie where the guy is surrounded by people, and yet you can feel that loneliness. And a lot of it is in the face of Henry G. Sanders, who plays Stan in the film. But Charles Burnett also showcases the desolation and the state of which the Watts area is in at this time. And it's done very stark and very matter-of-fact, but also beautifully in a strange way. Burnett has this way of taking all these things that we would find depressing and we would find hard to deal with and still make it beautiful without trivializing it. It's actually incredibly well done. This is one of those rare movies that is both moving and depressing. It's a wonderful yet exasperating experience to watch. It's something that I really don't want to talk more on, because I really think people should take the 90 minutes to go on the Criterion channel or to go on whatever streaming site it's on and just watch it and see how you think of it. I was moved at the end, but also really feeling the pain of the main character as it was going on, and just being amazed by how great this film is. Like, Killer of Sheep is a really good film. As for my rating, I mean, you can already guess what it is at this point. My rating is a 4.5 out of 5 for Killer of Sheep. It's a deeply moving and yet horribly depressing film at times. It clearly shows the pain that the main character is in. I don't think even pain is really the right way to say it. It's more just the feeling of futility and hopelessness that he has. But it also is sort of uplifting because it shows that despite the fact that he clearly is suffering in his head, that he still moves forward for his family. So it's moving in that way too. God, there's so much about this film that I just love, and I get more out of thinking more and more about it. I want to hear what you think of Killer of Sheep. You should definitely give it a shot and watch it whenever you get the chance, and let me know in the comments what you think. So overall, 4.5 out of 5 for me for Killer of Sheep. Let's get into the Letterboxd reviews. This one is from Guillotinette. Guillotinette gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and they say, beautiful film. The scene of the children jumping from the rooftops is iconic, but the scene of simply dancing with his wife could be one of the most romantic scenes in cinema history. I can see why there was no budging on the soundtrack needle drops. I'm going to hold my thought on Guillotinette's opinion here, and I'm going to showcase the other opinion I have here. This one is from Josh Larson. Josh Larson also gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And he says, the film's saddest moment is a moving single take of Stan and his wife dancing. Well, more like softly swaying while embracing in their bedroom to the sound of Dinah Washington singing This Bitter Earth. The song, like the movie, is a plaintive piece of romantic realism that itself recognizes how life can often feel like a dead end. That is what I absolutely love about this film in a way. That two people can get two different interpretations of what they're watching, and I see no fault in either because of just how Charles Burnett actually shot everything and how he constructed the film. I really just wanted to showcase that because I don't find either wrong, but it's just fascinating that people can look at the same scene and think two different ways about it. This next review is from Jeffrey Fink. Jeffrey gives it 4 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Jeffrey says, gritty, inventive, and feeling like the most important American film I've seen in a while. You know, I don't know if it's the most important, but I will say it's one of the most impressive. I think I've read somewhere this was made on less than $10,000. In one way, I can see that, but in another way, I can also believe that it was made for much more because of how beautiful the film does look in certain spots. And this last review is from Justin LaLiberty. Justin gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Justin says, finds both solace and energy in the mundane because Burnett knows how important those moments are. A life measured in fleeting interactions and forgotten labor. Again, another interpretation that is different than mine, but man, I think that's what's just so brilliant about this film, that we can all have these different feelings and thoughts on this film, but recognize its brilliance. So, just to review Killer of Sheep one last time, it is moving yet draining. It brilliantly shows the loneliness of the main character, even though he is surrounded by community and people. And it is a rare movie that is both moving and cripplingly depressing. And again, I think the main point I want to say is, I think Jean Demy gets the credit for being the film that makes you really feel its main character. I think Killer of Sheep does it a lot better than Jean Demy. So I guess if my main point is it better than Jean Demy? Yes. Yes, it is, and I will die on that hill. After watching The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, I always wanted to watch the other film Jacques Demy is most known for, and I have finally gotten the excuse to do it. And that film is The Young Girls of Rochefort. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.3 out of 5, and that makes it number 135 in Letterboxd's top 250 narrative films of all time list. It has an IMDb of 7.7 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 98% fresh, and there is no Metacritic rating. I thought that was kind of weird. I might have missed it, but I did not see it. As for accolades, it was nominated for an Oscar for Best Musical Score. It's on the Criterion Collection Spine number 717. It's on the BFI Sight and Sound's Greatest Films of All Time list at number 185, tied with Paris, Texas, The Birds, The River, An Autumn Afternoon, Love Streams, Greed, Ran, Pyasa, Wings of Desire, and Magnolia. And it is featured in the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die by Stephen J. Schneider. Okay, so this is definitely a different vibe shift from Umbrellas of Cherbourg. Now, I loved Umbrellas of Cherbourg, but this movie is also really good for different reasons. I definitely love the mood and vibe of the film. It's very carefree and bright. It just feels like everyone is on this like really positive, very glowing wavelength that is really infectious to watch throughout the entire movie. And while it's warmer than Umbrellas with its colors, I really like the tone and use of pastels and the costumes and backgrounds in the film. It's got just a very popping, bright feel to it. The colors that are used are really good. It's like the colors that were used in Umbrellas of Cherbourg in the background. I think they're more foreground in this film, which I think actually really works in this, especially with what the film is trying to do. The musical and dance numbers are very good. I think the sign of a really good musical is when I can look back at the movie and go, I can't think of any dance number I didn't like. I can't think of any musical number I did not enjoy. The film is basically like a couple of minutes of some plot and then boom, dance number. A couple minutes of some plot, boom, dance number. And for a 2-hour film, that can be exhausting if some of them don't work. But because those scenes are good, it really works in this film. I absolutely loved it. But if I'm being honest, if I had to choose which one I liked more, I'm still going to go Umbrellas just because I think it's much more creative and I like the story of it better. I liked the romances in this film, but I wasn't really entirely affected by them, honestly. Like, I think they were nice. I think they were sweet in a certain way. But was I emotionally invested like I was in Umbrellas or even in any of the big romance films that are my favorites? No, not really. I was really just more into the vibe and the feel of the film more than I was into the story, which for this film is not a bad thing, to be absolutely honest. The other problem I have with this film, this is a nitpick, so I'm going to just note that here. This is a nitpick. The close calls and meeting by destiny storyline is charming in a way, but they kind of go overboard a little bit in this. And that's especially when it comes to the sadist plotline, which again is a very minor plotline. But at that point I was like, okay, really? Did you have to go that far? Okay, you do have to stretch a little bit to get into the film, but because of how light and breezy and I guess non-consequential the film feels, I kind of could just go with it and go, okay, yeah, everyone's just missing each other and oh boy, like, are they gonna meet, you know? And with that, I was fine with it. I was like, okay, I can go with it, that's cool, but when it got into that plot line, I'm like, okay, can we just cool it a little bit? Can we cut that out and just get right to the story? But, oh well, I mean, that's there. It's not a big deal. It's not something I look at and go, this ruined a movie. I was like, that was when I was going, that's a little bit too much, don't you think? So for a rating, I'm going to give The Young Girls of Rochefort 4 stars out of 5. I really enjoyed the film. I love the vibe. I love the color. The dance numbers are great. And just the overall mood the film has, I really liked. It seems kind of unfair to compare this to Umbrellas, and the only reason why they're compared because they're made by the same guy. But I do like Umbrellas more because of the story and the creativity that film had. But again, I did like the romances. I didn't find them very affecting, but I found them enjoyable. And the whole close call, meetings by destiny plotline gets a little tiresome at a certain point. But overall, I think The Young Girls of Rochefort is a great movie. I give it 4 stars out of 5. Definitely check it out. if you get a chance. Let's get into the Letterboxd reviews. This one is from Anika. Anika gives it 5 stars out of 5, and Anika says, I want to live in this movie. Man, I gotta tell you, a lot of people had this same comment, or I want to die for this movie, or I wish I could just live in this movie. Like, a lot of people said that, and I can understand why. It's a very beautiful and happy film. This next review is from Ryu. Ryu gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart, and Ryu says, it seems unfair to compare The Young Girls of Rochefort with Singing in the Rain. I think both are equally amazing, and I swear I just found out that Gene Kelly also plays in this film. Yeah, same here. Same here. Because at first I was watching this movie going, that guy looks a lot like Gene Kelly. And then I saw him dance and goes, wow, he dances a lot like Gene Kelly too. And then when I realized, oh shit, that's Gene Kelly. I was like, holy shit. It's like, that's crazy. And he speaks French. Like, wow. Like, God, that guy's super talented. Damn. Anyway, moving on. Love story, dress style, use of color, singing voice, musical score, and choreography. Jacques Demy truly creates unforgettable works. Yeah, there's a lot I really like about this film. You know, honestly, I'm not a person who's into fashion, but even I was watching this film going, those suits are really snappy. I like the way that these people look in this film. Even Mr. Dame is a guy that I thought looked pretty good. I was like, damn, he looks pretty good. Okay. Wow. Let's get into the next review. This one is from Deselwins. I am sorry, I probably butchered your name. Or Deselwins. They give The Young Girls of Rochefort 4 stars out of 5 with a heart. And they say, but does it spark joy? Yes. Yeah, I can agree. I just had a stupid grin on my face watching this film. It was very entertaining and very happy. And the last review is from Tylot Lantern. Tylot Lantern gives it 5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And he says, Gene Kelly in a Jacques Demy film? That's it. That's the review. And yeah, I guess that's all you really need to say, because Gene Kelly is in a film that's this colorful. I can see why people love it so much. So let's get down to the review one more time for The Young Girls of Rochefort. I think it's beautiful, happy, and vibrant. It's got a definite vibe and feel that I really connected with and really enjoyed. And I liked all the music and dance numbers in this film, and which is a rarity when it comes to musicals. Even though I like the romances and I like the whole close calls and meeting by destiny storyline, it got a little tiresome at certain points in the film. But I would say, honestly, if you enjoy musicals and you don't mind the language gap, I really think you should check this out. Especially if you like old musicals, if you like the old classic Hollywood musicals. I think you would find yourself really enjoying this film. So definitely check out The Young Girls of Rochefort when you get a chance.
Hi, I'm Cheryl, and I'm a filmmaker. No, I'm not really a filmmaker, but I have a videotaping business with my friend Tamara, and I work at a video store, so I'm working on being a filmmaker. The problem is I don't know what I want to make a film on.
Finally, we have a film that made the BFI Sight and Sound list that's become a staple in LGBTQ cinema, and that is The Watermelon Woman, directed by Cheryl Dunye. It has a Letterboxd score of 4.1 out of 5, an IMDb of 7.1 out of 10, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 92% fresh, and a Metacritic score of 74. As for accolades, it's on the Criterion Collection spine number 1184. It's on the BFI Sight and Sound Greatest Films of All Time list at number 146, tied with Chinatown, Grand Illusion, India Song, Alien, and Vampire. It's on IndieWire's Best Films of the 90s list at number 79, and on 2021 it became part of the National Film Registry. You know, it feels like for the last 10 years I kept hearing about this movie. I didn't hear about this film at all in the 90s and the 2000s, but around the 2010s, 2020s, The Watermelon Woman became a big movie that a lot of people wanted to get their hands on and watch, and often celebrated, and I was very interested in watching this film. And I've got to be honest, I kind of had the same feeling about this film that I had with Paris is Burning. But let's get into my thoughts on the film. I think The Watermelon Woman has some funny moments, and the mockumentary stuff is interesting, but at a certain point, it kind of feels like it's a little too slight for me. I really feel like at a certain point in the film that the film should have concentrated more on the documentary and less on the rom-com-y kind of interpersonal relationship stuff, because even though those things were fine, they were pretty conventional, and I just felt like they weren't the best thing forward for this movie. So I kind of, again, had that same feeling I had with Paris is Burning, where there were elements of the film that I really appreciated and enjoyed. But then looking back, I'm watching the film going, I really wish there was more of this. I really liked the documentary stuff, but they really concentrated more on the relationships. And the relationships are fine. The documentary stuff was what I was really more interested in than really the rom-com stuff, which I'm a rom-com fan. I usually like them. This film is fine. Like, I don't really find them to be bad. It's just not as compelling. The other problem I kind of have with this film is editing-wise, and the way the film is shot and blocked is pretty inconsistent. The way that the scenes are shot outside of the documentary are shot well in certain circumstances, but in others it seems a little too conventional. I do like how the documentary stuff is shot, but again, there's this total inconsistency with the film that I think if they would have concentrated more on the documentary, I think it would have worked better for me in that end than it did with the rom-com stuff. But again, I don't think any of it's bad. I just think a better focus on the documentary would have been a lot better for me, personally. So overall, I'm going to give The Watermelon Woman 3 stars out of 5. I enjoyed the film. I think it was funny in parts, and the documentary stuff I thought was the most interesting and fascinating parts of the film. I gotta be honest, I was looking for more of the documentary stuff in this film than the rom-com parts. I know this is an important film for people of this community, but honestly, I was kind of surprised that it was such a conventional rom-com in a sort of way. I know it's not conventional in a way because it represents that group, so I understand that, but I guess I was really expecting more documentary stuff, and when I didn't get that, it kind of felt like there should have been more to it than there was, and that's where I kind of felt disappointed. Not disappointed enough not to like the film, but disappointed to be like, oh, is that it? Is that all there was? And maybe there's an overhyping problem on my end. 3 stars out of 5 for me for The Watermelon Woman. Let's get into the final Letterboxd reviews. This first review is from Call's Apartment. Call gives it 3 stars out of 5, and he says, the film contains the beating, pulsating heart of the 90s anime cinema. The raw everything that made Clerks and She's Gotta Have It such revelations on the screen. I agree with that, actually. This definitely felt like a film that could only be made in the 90s, and with the energy that it had. I definitely agree with that. Cheryl Dunye plays a version of herself working in a video store and trying to make her first film. She sells on an archaeology and history of an actress from the early sound era, a black woman forced into mammy roles, billed as the Watermelon Woman. The film plays around with ideas circling around black and lesbian identity, interracial romance, and the distance between the things that change throughout history and the things that stay the same. Yeah, I gotta say, I found it very interesting that a lot of the terminology that is used today was also in this film. Another thing that this had in common with Paris is Burning. The film simultaneously feels slight and important. A breezy and chatty dramedy with shaky 90s indie dialogue, but a strong structure and an ocean of thoughts and feelings to sort through. Okay, I think that might be where my problem is at here, is that it both felt slight and important, but I felt like it felt much more slight than it really felt important. And I think the importance is where the documentary stuff is, and why I wanted more of that than I really got of the standard rom-com-y stuff that the film, I think, dominated with. Overall, I liked the rom-com stuff, but I really felt like that was more of a focus of the film than the identity and the documentary stuff, which I think would have benefited to have more time on it. The film gave me nostalgia for a time when this was what indie cinema looked like before production tools became so widely available that distributors got spoiled for choice on what they could pick up, and indies just became cheaper mainstream films. Yes and no. This might be sacrilegious for a lot of people. I wouldn't mind a remake of this movie, like at all. If they made a remake of this movie with today's technology and today's standards, I kind of think this would end up being a better film in a way. Don't crucify me in the comments, please. Please don't do it. The dreams of the 90s is alive, yada yada. Anyway, this is essential art house queer cinema. I think historically has become essential queer cinema. I think in the next 10 years, there's going to be a lot more of that. I know with how things are that anything quote unquote woke is going to get destroyed and no one's going to pay attention to it. But the beautiful thing about film nowadays is all it takes is maybe about a year or so, and those things bubble up from the surface and gain a fan base pretty quickly. So I think in time, The Watermelon Woman will be a movie where people will look at the film as a historical artifact of what queer cinema was at a point, and how it's stepping stone to something bigger. I think that's where it's going to end up being in the future. So let's get to the next review. This one is from Ruben Quiroga Kanahoti. Ruben gives it 2 stars out of 5, and Ruben says, of aesthetic significance, the obviousness of its staging was very distracting, original but slow. Yeah, I don't think it's slow. I think the staging is only distracting is because it's inconsistent. I don't think it's like visually bad. It's just that there's certain parts of the movie where I just wish they kept a consistent tone. And that's where my issue with the staging and the look of the film really was. All right, so I gave 2 mid reviews. Let's get to the really positive ones. This one's from Zavi. Zavi gives it 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. And Zavi says, a captivating exploration on Black queerness and how we choose to tell history. And I think the second part for me is where I was much more fascinated in what the film was saying. I just don't think it said enough of it in it. I'm going to keep saying it. If they concentrated more on the documentary stuff, I think it would have been a much more fascinating film for me. So I'll move off of that. And the final review is from Saren. Saren gives it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And Saren says, Cheryl Dunye fully made me believe that the watermelon woman was a real person. Yeah, I gotta give her credit for that. For a good amount of the movie, I was like, wait, was this a real actress? What? I don't remember a Faye Richards. I don't remember a watermelon woman. But you know, in a way, she is. She's representing all those that haven't been seen or heard, not having been important enough to be archived. Dunye created Faye Richards to put down a story for those who should have had their own story written into history. Yeah, very true. I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's what Dunye was going for with the documentary stuff. Which, again, I'm going to keep repeating myself. I wish she did more of. I really wish she did more of that. So in review, The Watermelon Woman is a decent rom-com with a very interesting making of a documentary film inside of it. I think all parts of the film are fine, but a bit conventional. But I do feel like there were some inconsistencies when it came to the way that the film was shot. And I also really felt like if they would have concentrated more on the documentary stuff, it would have been a much more interesting movie, for me at least. Do I think The Watermelon Woman is a bad movie? No. Not at all. I guess I overhyped myself into thinking this was going to be bigger than what it was, but it's interesting for what it is. But for a certain subsect of people, it's going to be something that they're going to really enjoy. So if you're of that group, I would say give it a shot if you haven't, but you probably already have. Otherwise, for me, it's decent. Now let's recap the movies I reviewed in this episode. I gave Battleship Potemkin 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. Not only is this film an important film to watch, it's also a film that still works to this very day. Beautiful to watch, it tells a very effective story, and man, some of those sequences are amazing. You should definitely experience it if you haven't seen it. I gave 4 stars out of 5 with a heart to The Young Girls of Rochefort. Beautiful looking film with the pastel colors. I really like the vibe and the mood of the film. Just very bright, very light with both the costumes, the backgrounds, and the mood of the film. And the musical dance numbers are really good. I do like Umbrellas of Cherbourg more for its creativity and story, but that shouldn't be faulted on this film. And the romances are good, but I wasn't really emotionally affected by them necessarily. And finally, I gave The Watermelon Woman 3 stars out of 5. I found the documentary stuff to be much more interesting than the rom-com stuff, and I wish they kind of focused on that more. But if you're within a certain group that would be interested in this movie, I think you have a big treat that you can watch if you haven't seen it already. And my film of the week is Killer of Sheep, directed by Charles Burnett. I have to say, after watching the film, it was very effective, but even as time has gone on, I still found the film very moving. It's a very draining watch at times, just seeing how downcast the main character is, but the film brilliantly shows the loneliness of the main character while showing him being surrounded by people and community, and it's masterfully done. It's the rare movie that is both moving and depressing, and it's a wonderful yet exasperating experience. My film of the week is Killer of Sheep by Charles Burnett. 4.5 stars out of 5 with a heart. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely make an appointment to see it soon. And that is it for this episode of Watch, Rate, Heart. But before I go, let me ask you a question. Are there films on the BFI Sight and Sound Greatest of All Time list that you think will not be there when the list gets refreshed in 2032? I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of the films that made the list this time, that were directed by LGBTQ people and female filmmakers, especially ones that are in the back 250, are probably not going to be there when this is refreshed. There was such a focus on this time to have more of that representation that it really caused a firestorm in a weird way. I really think there is going to be an overcorrection in 2032 where a lot of those films are probably going to be higher in the back or probably not in there at all. I also think films like Jeanne Dielman, Beau Travail, and Cleo from 5 to 7 will be on the list, but they'll be in the lower spots, probably in like the 60 to 100 spots. I might be wrong on that, but I think that just the reaction from when the list was released in 2022 was strong enough for Sight and Sound to maybe want to change some of their metrics again for 2032 just to overcorrect, which will again cause another backlash. So we'll see when that happens in 2032. We got about 6 years, so we'll see. If you liked any of the reviewers I highlighted in this episode, you can check the video description for a link to their Letterboxd profile, and be sure to give them a follow and let them know that Brad from Watch Rate Heart sent you. You can follow me on Letterboxd and X at Watch Rate Heart. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and share with your friends. I'm Brad from Watch Rate Heart. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all watch and rate movies, but you give them the heart that makes them live forever.